Hello, I'm Orkhan Amashov. Welcome to Context, where we closely examine and inspect some of the key developments of global and regional nature. Amidst a rapidly shifting global order, the latest EU Defence Summit laid bare Europe's deepening strategic ambiguity. As the conflict in Ukraine grinds on, the continent remains hamstrung by institutional inertia, fragmented national interests, and persistent over-reliance on NATO. The re-emergence of Donald Trump in the White House with his transactional view of alliances has amplified anxieties across European capitals, exposing the fragility of existing security frameworks. In this vacuum, the United Kingdom, unshackled from the constraints of EU policymaking, is cautiously reasserting itself as a transatlantic intermediary. Its robust military backing for Ukraine and enduring ties with Washington lend it credibility, but also invited some scrutiny. Can post-Brexit Britain credibly serve as Europe's strategic linchpin? At the heart of this moment lies a paradox. Europe's ambitions for strategic autonomy have rarely been more pronounced, yet its capacity for decisive collective action appears increasingly compromised. As talk of a coalition of the willing resurfaces, the question is not merely one of political alignment, but of existential direction. Is the UK's bridge-building effort a genuine strategic pivot or simply a stopgap amidst the continent's creative drift? Joining me now to discuss this very important matter is Professor Tim Wilson, political analyst and commentator based in Istanbul. Professor, welcome to Context.
It's very nice to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Professor, has Europe become strategically irrelevant on defence-related matters?
No, I think it's become more relevant than ever, but it's become incoherent, and that incoherence can be traced back, I think, really to the beginning of the Israeli response to the Gaza attacks, and to von der Leyen going off to Israel to show support, and then realizing that actually she didn't have the support of all of Israel, that Ireland, that Spain, that Belgium were irritated. And it's that fracturing of Europe in whatever is happening. So at the moment with Ukraine, the fracturing is really being felt with people like Fico and Orban, yeah. and then you're seeing in contrast Donald Tusk pushing ahead because he's closest really to the problem, and his foreign minister Radek Sikorski clearly seeing the need for Europe to do something, and not quite being able to bring the whole of Europe together. So it's an ongoing problem, which is meeting the issues. Well, I want to say head on, but that's the problem. Now it has to act, and it's realizing that it cannot act in harmony because there's so many states that simply don't agree. And into this mess comes Britain, which is recognizing that it can lead, it can give a lead, but again, it's not part of the group. Yes. And so with the new defense pact, it's not there. It's not capable of really accessing this. Keir Starmer is talking about the coalition of the willing, yeah. But moving that from rhetoric, very good rhetoric, and a very good impression of leadership, to the reality of getting this group behind some sort of plan, that there is still going to be the fracturing. It's the fracturing which is the problem, and it's not just in defence. Yes. It's in migration policy. The migration policy is another clear example of the difference between a united Europe and the sort of bilateral agreements which particularly the southern countries are having to get to grips with, because all the migration problems fall on the backs, as they have been doing for 20 years, 25 years, of the countries in the Mediterranean, particularly Greece and Italy, and they're not given enough support by the rest of the EU to deal with that.
So,
So Maloney goes to Albania, and rightly so.
So European Union looks incredibly fragmented because different countries have got their own interests. Before moving to the subject involving the United Kingdom and the potential role it could play as a bridge between the continent and Washington, D.C., let's just focus on the continent for the time being. Do you think EU will eventually be able to form a unified military vision? And having a unified military vision, how central is this to the European shared common future?
Well, Europe can form a military. Europe can have a single vision, but the problem is that the self-interest of the individual nations gets in the way. So while there are nations like Hungary that are ploughing their own route, I don't see that. So it's back to this difference between the rhetoric and the reality.
What are the key spoilers? Terribly sorry for my interjection. I'm terribly sorry. What are the key spoilers inside the continent, inside the European Union, apart from Hungary?
An ability to act decisively, and equally, I'm not sure that even a united Europe at this stage is any match for Russia flexing its muscles. If Russia wants to move through Ukraine and into Eastern Europe, I'm not sure that Europe is ready to withstand that level of aggression. And that is the problem. And it's partly about unity.
About unity. And, yes, and they can this thing. Sorry, please, pray continue.
No, and the unity is fractured as well because of the European dependence up to the point of the Ukraine war on Russian gas and the complexity of these links. It's one thing to have a common currency. It's quite another thing to have a common defense strategy and an ability to deal with a particularly mendacious adversary. And Putin represents a serious threat.
And in the midst of all of those changes and a degree of uncertainty which is prevailing within the confines of the continent, do you think the UK can truly act as a bridge between Brussels and Washington, bearing in mind that it's not a member of the European Union, but still a European country, of course? And what do you make of this argument that in the light of what happened on the 28th of February, that I'm referring to the Oval Office exchange between President Zelensky and Trump, there is a special role for UK to play under the circumstances. And this special role is based on two fundamental linchpins. One is that UK has always been very supportive of Ukraine. UK has got this leadership quality, in particular when it comes to Ukraine. And number two, UK has got the special relationship with the United States, which probably is no longer as special as it used to be. And on the basis of the two fundamental linchpins, UK could play a special consequential role. What do you make of that argument?
I think in terms of the special relationship, this is wishful thinking and is being tested to the extreme. And what is extraordinary is how Sir Keir Starmer is shaping up and showing some sort of leadership potential. I don't know whether the special relationship has always been on for America to call. And I think we in Britain are far less special to America than America is special to us. However, we speak a common language, and we have some shared interests. I think Keir Starmer was pushed into action partly because of Emmanuel Macron's brilliance in going over to see Trump first, and a combination of Macron and Starmer may well prove decisive. There could be some leadership there. It could be enough to at least sort out the language. I don't think it's enough to sort out the practicalities. Mr. Trump has his own plans and seems to be withdrawing from an interest in Europe altogether. Even if Europe were to increase its spending on defense, it's all a little bit too late. And I think we're going to be scrambling to respond to any sort of challenge at the moment. What I think would be decisive would be if the European Union were to see some sort of way to redefine its defense in terms of Ireland to Istanbul. If the European Union could somehow engage with Turkey in terms of defense and outside the NATO umbrella, then that would be decisive.
And how do you see the future of that interaction between Ankara and Brussels on a defense footing? How do you see that future of that interaction?
It's about rethinking what's going to happen, because NATO could collapse. If NATO collapses, then Turkey plays a decisive role in helping Europe to respond to any threat, and those threats are real. And a lot depends on how Trump continues to betray the American commitment to Ukraine, because the 28th of February that you referred to was disgraceful. The spat in the White House was pretty shocking, but then the withdrawal of intelligence to Ukraine was decisive, and Russia was then able to plow through the Ukrainian troops in Kursk, and those troops have had to retreat. There's no question. Whether America produces weapons or not, that's a much longer term problem. That suppression of intelligence was an outrageous act by an ally, and it had immediate effect. And I know people in Ukraine, soldiers, who are saying they're switching off their Starlink services because they don't trust them. Partly because they think that they've been hacked by Russians, by the Russian Secret Service, and partly because they think that Elon Musk is literally giving Russia access to the Starlink information. So whenever you switch on one of those Starlink devices, you are giving your position away to the Russian forces. It's an act of outrageous betrayal, and it has turned the. It's a decisive moment that's turned the war from something that might have been a stalemate, but it was in Ukraine's favor, to something which is clearly giving the advantage to Russia.
And what's your... Sorry.
Sorry, I was going to say, and Putin's claims to be involved in peace, the moment he gets off the telephone from Donald Trump, he's attacking energy powerhouses in Ukraine. This is a clear demonstration, and civilian targets, a clear demonstration he isn't interested in peace. If he can do that in Ukraine, he can do it to other countries as well. It's a very dangerous situation, and Europe needs to be ready, and I don't think it is ready at the moment.
No, you don't think Europe is ready? We earlier talked about Britain, about its potential role as a bridge between Europe and the United States of America. We talked about Turkey. Would you say that the closer interaction with Turkey could also potentially involve Turkey eventually joining the European Union, or that will be a separate arrangement, not based on?
I think, yes. Yeah, I think that's a pipe dream for Turkey to join the European Union at this moment. But one way forward would be to find a sort of semi-European Union which might embrace Britain and might embrace Turkey, might embrace other countries, Albania and so on, who are being drawn into the European circle, and eventually Europe needs to acknowledge this. If Italy's approach to immigration is going to rely on a relationship with Albania, Albania needs to be brought into that circle. And the same thing, if we are going to rely on Turkey for serious help with defense, then Turkey also needs to be brought within that European orbit. I don't think that means an absolute European recognition, but it means perhaps a sort of second band of European action. And we need to be thinking of the continent of Europe. We need to stop thinking about this federation of states in some sort of trade relationship or pseudo-political relationship. We need to think about the continent.
Yes, and what about Germany? I think recently one of the German commentators just before the elections there said that Germany had for some considerable time been reliant on American security, Chinese markets and Russian gas. The time has arrived to redefine German place within the continent. What do you make of Berlin?
Well, Germany is going to become the powerhouse of Europe. It's already had that potential, and it's now committed to spending more on defence. But again, you don't build up a military power in just a few months. It takes years. When the First War broke out, and Kitchener was having conversations with, I think it was Asquith, it'll all be over by December. This is what they were saying. So the Prime Minister, and Kitchener said it won't be over by 1917. It will take 3 years to build up enough troops to actively respond to the German attack. And he was right. And it takes a long time to build up a defense from zero. And across Europe and Britain, we have reduced our military capability to almost zero. And we have relied heavily on American diplomacy and the threat of an American response. And that is no longer possible. If America can deal with an ally as it has dealt with President Zelensky,
yes,
that means America is no longer reliable. It doesn't matter whether Britain is going to act as a go-between.
Yes.
We can't rely on America. We certainly can't rely on America under Trump. It may well be that Trump's presidency is cut short, but either by accusations of treason or by some natural process. But even his successors look very worrying. It doesn't look like this is a country that Europe can rely on for the foreseeable future, which means it needs to rely on itself.
Relying on itself, some people are saying that it's actually a blessing in disguise for Europe to realize that actually Europe needs to be able to protect its own interests without American backing. What do you make of that blessing in disguise argument?
I think people who talk about blessings in disguise are trying to justify the inevitable, are trying to make the best of a really bad deal. And the loss of America is a tragedy, economically, culturally, morally, and the loss of that American leadership is a tragedy. Now, I think there is a little bit of a twinkle of light on the horizon. I gather that the king is planning to offer Trump a sort of secret message. Maybe you would like to be part of the Commonwealth. Maybe that would be enough to flatter Trump and America back into its position of responsibility. This is all about each nation taking responsibility and caring for its neighbor. So Europe has for a long time behaved appallingly as a construct. So the northern nations have oppressed the southern nations. I remember being in Greece 25 years ago and being appalled by the number of migrants, refugees who are coming to Greece and are being left in the most detestable and wretched conditions. And that hasn't changed. In response, Greece developed this thing called pushbacks, which is a betrayal of humanity, to push refugees back into the sea as if they didn't exist, or to fire weapons on boats carrying refugees as if they're not human. And under Suella Braverman, the same sort of discussions were being had in Britain about refugees coming across the channel. We haven't gone that far, thankfully, but we need to take responsibility for each other. So the northern nations need to take responsibility for the southern nations in Europe. And it's more than just how many refugees people take. It's about guarding our borders and caring for our neighbors and talking to our neighbors. And partly you can explain problems by not having a common language, but increasingly everyone speaks English.
Yeah, extraordinarily. Despite the fact that Britain is outside the European Union, English.
Isn't that ironic? Isn't that ironic?
Indeed, indeed. Well,
even in Istanbul, people speak English, and I find it astonishing. With Britain, Brexit was such a disaster. And you go back to John Donne, "No man is an island." And he's talking about Europe in that poem. He talks about the responsibility that we have for each other, and when we break off from the mainland, we're breaking off from the continent. This is nonsense. We have to have responsibility, and I think in the end, we have to think of the greater continent, from Ireland through to Istanbul, through to actually through to Ankara. And we need to harness the goodwill.
And possibly to back Azerbaijan, who knows? Thank you, Professor. Thank you. So grateful to you for your time. Most grateful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Well, this was Professor Tim Wilson, political analyst and commentator, joined from Istanbul, Turkey. With Donald Trump back in the White House, NATO on shaky ground, and Ukraine still fighting, the UK sees an opening to mediate between Washington and Brussels. Although ambition alone may not fix Europe's perceived inertia, it seems there is a consequential role to play for many actors, including the United Kingdom. I'm Orkhan Amashov. Have a great weekend.